Hey everyone, Wolf Lord Rho here. Today we're discussing the Emperor's appointment of Warmaster. Was the grand spectacle of Ullanor a mistake? General spoiler warning to begin, as today we will be referencing events from across the Warhammer 40k universe. As always, I really recommend you read the stories for yourself first without spoilers, as that's the best way to enjoy the lore for yourself. So you have been warned, and with that said, let's just jump straight in. So the appointment of Warmaster. Supposed to be the beginning of a grand new era for the Imperium. Undoubtedly a pivotal moment of change for the galaxy. One that would echo out across the centuries. However, one I think most of us can agree ended up being the beginning of the end. Rather than being renowned with greatness, the title of Warmaster is mired in darkness. Now, we're not going to debate the choice of Horus today. That's a conversation we've had before and will again another day. It's a debate I love to have, as opinions change and new lore unravels. However, what we are focusing on today is the announcement of the Warmaster, the triumph of Ullanor, the moment Horus was named as Warmaster to the galaxy, and to his brothers. Did the Emperor make a mistake with how he handled this unveiling? Well, let's begin with why. Why it went down the way it did. Why the grand spectacle of Ullanor was done. For me, it was really the perfect crossroads of timing. A culmination of everything that had been building and fought for over the previous centuries. There's a little passage within the novel Fear to Tread that really gives a good explanation of motivation. The victory was sealed in blood and iron, and the call to triumph was sounded. By the Emperor's command, Ullanor was remade as a trophy world, designated Mundus Tropeum on all galactic maps and records of tithe. It would be a sight of glory and spectacle to cement not only this single conquest over the forces ranged against humankind, but a greater symbol of the crusade itself. For 200 Terran years, the Emperor's mighty endeavour had moved across the face of the galaxy to bring unity and illumination to the lost daughter worlds of old Earth. It had pushed back the night, reforged old links between civilizations, battled alien threats, and with regret, it had often given punishment. A change was coming though, a change that found its fulcrum on Ullanor. At this point, such was the Imperium's dominance over the galaxy, the Emperor clearly realized that the time was right for him to move on to stage 2. For any and all mistakes the Master of Mankind may have made, he was no fool. He knew this was a landmark moment. A moment that needed recognition for several purposes. For the Imperium to recognise and celebrate its achievement. To reinforce just what the Imperium is. And to mark Horus's appointment in the strongest way possible. To give his son the best chance to succeed. And all of that combined was aimed and intended to support the grand plan. And I think you get some evidence of that from a conversation between the Emperor and the Lion within L. Johnson's Primarch novel Lord of the First. "It is a pity your campaigns kept you from the triumph," said the Emperor. "Your presence was missed by your brothers. Horus in particular spoke to me of his regret. He knows that I would have attended had I been able," the Lion replied. a tone far sharper than any he had ever before employed in the presence of his father. "You are troubled," said the Emperor. "The Imperium celebrates, but its triumph is empty. The galaxy is not won because Horus has his great victory. Recall my words to you. Ullanor is just another victory. Then why the pageantry? Some men demand such pomp. They cannot accept the end of one era and the commencement of another without an occasion by which to mark it and give it meaning. Laurels must be given, honours and fair titles invented, so that they may be bestowed upon favoured generals. Some men need recognition." Now, of course, this being a Lionel Johnson focused story, the point of this conversation is to highlight how the lion doesn't seek reward. However, in doing so, it unveiled a lot of the Emperor's reasoning for Ullanor we spoke of. Some men demand such pomp. They cannot accept the end of one era and the commencement of another without an occasion by which to mark it and give it meaning. Laurels must be given, honours and fair titles invented so that they may be bestowed upon favoured generals. Some men need recognition. Now, the implication here could be that Horus needed that pageantry, the recognition. But for me, I really think the Emperor's meaning could apply to all of mankind, from the Primarchs to the simple soldier or citizen. Some may have struggled to accept Horus as Warmaster in the Emperor's place. Indeed, some Primarchs still did, which we'll discuss in a bit. However, again, that's why that spectacle was needed. That's why the pomp and circumstance of it all had to be done. For the message to sing out across the Imperium, not in lament in the Emperor's departure, but in rejoice at Horus's ascension. The Emperor needed this to be a triumphant affair, a moment of rejoicement, of recognition, and for it to be accepted and celebrated by all of mankind. And so for me, in that regard, Ullanor was absolutely needed, and a success. No Primarch could have eclipsed the Emperor across the galaxy. However, Ullanor made it about as possible as it could be, at least for the wider Imperium. Now, when it comes to the Primarchs, however, that's where I think maybe the ball was dropped just a little bit. That's where a mistake was perhaps made. So again, the appointment and announcement of Horus as Warmaster at Ullanor was designed to show the Emperor's universal support for his chosen son, as equally intended for the Primarchs as well as the rest of mankind. And many Primarchs were indeed there for the triumph. As far as we know, the largest ever assembly of Primarchs at one time. Which, on a side note, has always had an air of sadness or disappointment about it for me. That all the Primarchs were never all together at the same time. What a great scene that would have been. What a moment for them that would have been to celebrate. However, I digress. At Ullanor, we know the Primarchs present were Horus, obviously, Mortarion, Fulgrim, Magnus, Lorgar, Angron, Rogel Dawn, Jagatai, and lastly Sanguinius. 9 Primarchs in total. A truly remarkable gathering. And we're told there was some representation of 14 of the legions in the Grand Parade. More impressive still. However, it's undeniable the appointment of Warmaster caused division amongst the Primarchs. For example, within Fear to Tread, we witnessed a later conversation between Horus and Sanguinius on that very matter. Angron won't be the only one. There will be others who become embittered by the distinction Father gave me this day. When Perturabo hears of it, he let the sentence trail off. A shadow passed over his brother's face. It will not be to his liking. That is so. He will think it should have been him. And Kurz, well, Sanguinius hesitated before he said the next words. They'll hate you for it, at least at first. And it's not only the Primarchs themselves who were aware of the rifts that would be formed by this announcement. Within the novel Slaves to Darkness, we saw a conversation between Horus and Malcador the Sigillite on the eve of the Grand Parade. Horus, having already been informed of his father's decision by the Emperor himself, was walking in private amongst the sprawling campfires, trying to come to terms with just what it all would mean. You wonder how it will affect you. It was Horus's turn to raise an eyebrow. I do not mean that you doubt yourself, my friend, just that you wonder what the world will be after this. And yes, it will change you. How could it not? But you will rise, Horus. The Emperor did not make this decision lightly. He knows that you will become what you always promised to be. Malcador paused and shifted his weight on his staff. The others? Yes, some will resent it. Some will even resist. But ultimately, all will accept it. I was wondering what I would do if this duty had been given to another, to Rabute or Rogel. And, asked Malcador, what would you have done? I would have wondered why it had not been given to me, said Horus, then laughed, the sound bright against the breath of the wind. Then I would accept it, and do everything I could to help them bear such a burden. Quite so, said Malcador, and many of your brothers will do just that. So, as we can see here, Malcador is fully aware that some Primarchs are going to react against this decision, resent and even resist it, that it would undoubtedly cause division amongst the brothers. And if Malcador knew that, the Emperor knew that. The Sigillite and the Emperor discussed everything, every aspect of his plan and intent. They would have absolutely discussed the Warmaster appointment. And if there was any doubt, Malcador does reveal the Emperor left it to Malcador to discuss these very things with Horus. So it's clear the Emperor was fully aware of the trials the Warmaster appointment would come with, amongst his sons. And so with that in mind, for me, I can't help but think the Emperor did make a bit of a mistake with how he handled the Warmaster announcement. In terms of the wider Imperium, as we said earlier, the triumph of Ullanor, the grandeur, the spectacle, it was necessary and delivered what was needed. But in the terms of the Primarchs, for me, it didn't tick the right boxes. The Emperor unveiling Horus as Warmaster, surrounded by the glory of the Imperium, worked with the people, the common soldiery, but it didn't necessarily work with the Primarchs, because for all their roles as generals and warlords, they are essentially a family, and it was a far more personal decision to them. This wasn't just the Emperor picking his number one general, this was their father picking another brother. And so they had a far more personal reaction. Even the ones who fully supported Horus would have on some level felt slighted. And don't get me wrong here, have that triumph and celebration at Ullanor, yes. But the night before, with just the Emperor, Malcador and the Primarchs in private, is when they should have been told. When the Emperor asked Horus to be Warmaster the night before, or more appropriately told him he was going to be Warmaster, the other Primarchs should have been present as well. The Emperor could have addressed it in private with the Primarchs in conversation, rather than on a balcony in front of the entire galaxy. While Lorgar, Sanguinius and Fulgrim may have cheered, there were others that didn't. And what's more, all the Primarchs should have really been there. Yes, the practicalities of the crusade across the galaxy would have made it incredibly difficult. But this was the Emperor leaving the crusade. This was one of the Primarchs ascending over his brothers. Every Primarch should have been there for that moment. And the Emperor could have, and really should have, insisted on it. Those legions would have survived their Primarchs being away for just a while. They could have come in just for that one conversation, then departed immediately. I'm pretty sure the Dark Angels, the Ultramarines legions for example, could have been left in more than capable hands just for a few days, or weeks given the amount of travel involved. The acceptance of Horus as Warmaster was far more important than any one campaign. Yes, the Emperor is constantly talking about having time against them. However, some things are so important, they really should have made the time for them. No, the Emperor wasn't going to explain everything to them. No, he wasn't going to tell them the truth of his project on Terra, even if he should have. But simply having all the Primarchs present, where he could have told them his intent and his reasoning in private, just between him and his sons, I'm sure would have been far better received. It would have allowed the Primarchs not chosen a greater understanding, given them a greater sense of value, and it would have allowed Horus a greater sense of reassurance. Not as much of those feelings of doubt and divide, which definitely ultimately contributed to his fall. It absolutely would have been harder for Chaos to corrupt Horus if he didn't have so many personal doubts, so many chinks in that figurative armour. As ever with the Emperor, maybe it's having his eyes focused on humanity as a whole, when he really needed to have them closer to home, that cost him once again. Him taking things for granted. The triumph at Ullanor wasn't a mistake by any stretch of the imagination. It was a needed celebration and announcement to humanity. However, announcing the Warmaster to the galaxy and the Primarchs at the same time, that could have and should have been handled better for me. There should have been a conversation first, in private. And all the brothers should have been present. Would the heresy have been averted otherwise? No, perhaps not. But I do think the appointment of Warmaster contributed to that divide and the tensions amongst the brothers. And had that been handled just a little bit better, again, Chaos would have certainly had a harder time getting their claws into Horus. But as always everyone, what do you think? What do you think of the triumph at Ullanor? What do you think of the announcement of Horus as Warmaster? Do you understand the Emperor's logic for doing it the way he did? And do you think it was a success? And on the other hand, do you think it contributed to the divide amongst the Primarchs? And could the Emperor have handled it differently? Would a simple private conversation the night before, with all the Primarchs present, have averted some of those future tensions? And considering he was naming one Primarch first amongst all the rest, should he really have insisted that all the Primarchs be present? As always, leave your thoughts in the comments below. Huge thank you to all my subscribers, your support truly means a lot to me, it really does. If you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. And if you enjoyed this particular vid, then why not drop a like on it too. But with that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again real soon.